Sevgili Kıbrıs Genç TV izleyicileri, programımız Polling Station'dan Enfield'de devam ediyor ve biraz önce demiştik John Ryan, milletvekili adayı John Ryan bizlerle birlikte olacak. Neden John Ryan'ı en son aldık? Evet, İngilizlerin meşhur bir lafı var. Last is the best. Ve biz de John Ryan'ı en son aldık. Çünkü o en iyisi olduğu için. Hi John.
Merhaba.
Hoş geldin.
Sen nasılsınız?
Evet, çok iyiyiz. Siz nasılsınız?
İyiyim.
Evet, what's your observation about the local elections?
I think here in Enfield, it's clearly been, I think, a very positive night for Labour. I think we've had this Labour Council now for the last 4 years, and I think they've done a really good job under very, very difficult circumstances. And I think they've got their reward tonight, and it's very, very encouraging for the coming year. So I think the Labour councillors deserve the increased vote that they're seeing. I'm hoping very much they're going to pick up a few more seats. We don't know yet, but I'm very hopeful we can. But overall, I think the vote is increased, and some of the seats that we won last time by a very slim margin, we're winning by a much greater margin tonight.
And when we walking on the police station, we see the vote. It's only the UKP. It's only the one vote for only the UKP, not the other parties. What you can thinking about?
Well, there's also some votes for Greens as well, but I think it looks to me like UKIP are taking votes from the Tories. That's not to say they don't take some from Labour, but I think overall they're taking more votes from the Tories than from Labour. But I think, the Tories have tried to outdo them on unbelievable and unrealistic and quite unpleasant promises around immigration. And I don't think that is the right thing to do. Clearly, there are issues about ensuring that we have firm but fair immigration policies. But that's not quite the same as the things that UKIP say, which I think are very divisive and very unpleasant. And I think the Conservatives make big promises and don't keep them. And I think people know that. So they made all kinds of promises about immigration numbers, and everybody knows that it's turned out to be a complete fantasy, not kept any of those promises. But I actually think today, and people voting, ordinary, hard-working people know that they are facing a cost of living crisis. And they have the Conservative-led government telling them day in, day out that they've solved all the economic problems, that everything's on the mend. And yet what they've seen is all their bills going up, their food bills, their energy bills, their rent, the difficulty in buying a house, especially for young couples, trying to get a mortgage. They've seen wages held down, suppressed. They see things like 0 hours contracts, where people are getting very low pay and don't know how many hours a week they'll get work for and what their income will be. And on the other hand, they see people earning over £150,000 a year being given a tax cut by this government. Now, that's not fair by anybody's standards. And I think people are fed up with that kind of behaviour from the Conservatives. And what Labour's been saying, Labour's policies are for the many, not the few. We will serve everybody equally and be fair about it. And I think the other thing that Conservatives tell people is that the economic crisis was Labour's fault, and they've come in and they're sorting it out. Well, I just don't think people are fooled by this kind of approach. I think the economic crisis was in fact an international crisis, and it was in the main caused by the banks and the subprime situation, which was disgraceful, absolutely awful for people, but it wasn't caused by Labour. And I think most people also know that the problems are not getting sorted out. These austerity measures, it's austerity for ordinary hard-working people, but it's not austerity for people earning very large salaries. As I said, for those people, it's a tax cut. And we've seen a huge growth in the gap between rich and poor. And that can only be laid at the door of this Tory-led coalition government. And I think people have rejected them here today in Enfield.
Okay, Songur, what you want to ask?
I mean, Joanne have answered most of my question as well relating to the economy. My other question I'd like to ask about the UKIP has won about 12 councils and they were all Tories. And what's your comment on this? What would you say on that? And also, how would that would affect the general elections next year?
I think that is a challenge to all of us.
Of course, I have to add on that the results are not definite, so
yes.
I have to add.
But clearly, whatever the results are going to be, UKIP have picked up votes. And as I say, I think they've taken more votes from the Conservatives than from Labour, but they have picked up votes. And that is a challenge to all of us. I think what happens is, the public have had a sense that in some ways politics is broken. And I think UKIP is a repository of a protest vote. I think it's people feeling a bit fed up and disillusioned with politics. And I think it's people feeling very let down by the Conservative-led coalition. And that's why it's more their vote than the Labour vote that UKIP are taking. And so I think this is a challenge for all of us to ensure that we do politics in a way that wins back the public's confidence in politics and politicians, that shows the public that we are committed and motivated to bringing forward policies and working very hard to make the situation better, to serve their needs. And that's what we're supposed to be doing, serving the needs of the electorate. And they have to know that we're doing that, and we're doing it a fair, even-handed way. It's not just about lining your own pocket. It's not about serving just a few people at the top and ignoring others. It's just not fair to give everything to a few and make everybody else feel the pain. If you pursue those kind of policies, people turn away from you. And I think that's why people have turned away from the Conservatives, and I think that's part of the explanation why people have turned to UKIP. But don't think any of us could afford to be complacent. I think we've got to reach out to the public. It's not for the public aren't the problem. Politics has been the problem. And we've got to show that we've learned a lot of lessons over recent years, and that we understand we've got to reach out, we've got to be committed and genuine, we've got to keep our promises, and we've really got to deliver for people. And that's what this Labour Council in Enfield has been doing. And I think that's why they've seen an increase in their vote tonight.
That was my second question, actually. How would you comment on this? That there's a big gap between Labour and the other parties tonight, talking about 60-70% to Labour. So how would you comment on that? Of course, the results are obvious. I think tonight, after this time, it's quarter past 2, and what would the council will do to people in Enfield?
I think one of the great strengths of this Labour Council is that, first of all, they've been very honest with people about the circumstances. They've had a lot of cuts from central government, but they made very clear that they had certain aims, and they intended to deliver on them, and not promise everything, but be clear about the things they could promise. So for the whole 4 years of this administration, you've not had a rise in council tax. And I think that's the right thing to do when people are under pressure, really feeling the cost of living crisis, and struggling to make ends meet, particularly through the winter when our energy bills were just sky high, and the weekly shopping costs were sky high as well. And rents in London have gone up, and we're affected here in Enfield the same as everywhere else. So not raising their council tax, I think, was a very, very important sign of being on your side and understanding the difficulties. But they also made it clear that they were going to do everything they could to ensure that people felt safe and secure. So they've worked very hard to bring forward community safety measures, especially when we've had such huge cuts in our policing from national government. The Conservative-led coalition has absolutely decimated some of our safer neighbourhood teams, which people really valued and which made a difference. The police on the streets, a uniformed presence that people could see. So the council have made community safety a priority, putting up alley gates, clearing up fly tipping as soon as it appears so places don't get run down and become subject to antisocial behaviour. They've invested in the parks and in local community events in the parks, bringing people together, creating a really good environment for people. They've kept the streets clean, they've emptied the bins, all the bread and butter issues. When you open your front door each day, you want where you live to look clean and decent and to feel safe. And that's what they've prioritised. They've also invested in and opened up a lot more primary school classes, because they inherited a terrible problem from the previous Conservative council, where some children weren't being able to start school until a whole year later, or they were being given schools many miles from where they live. Now, when a 4 or 5-year-old starting school, they need to be at school in their own area where they live. That's where their community is. That's how you build community. The local primary school is the heart of a community. So I think they've made a real effort to see what the issues are that make life difficult for people in a local community and really address them. And I think people have felt that difference. So I think putting people first and putting communities first, and not just disappearing into the civic centre to feel important sat on committees and never be seen again. People don't want that. They're fed up with that. You stand for council to serve the people of the borough, to serve the community. And I think this Labour Council has been doing that, and I think people can tell, and they're going to carry on doing that.
Thank you very much, and good luck to you next year's on MP's election, in general elections. Thank you.
Thank you.
Evet sevgili Kıbrıs Genç TV izleyicilerimiz, yayınımız Enfield'deki pool'dan devam edecek ve John Ryan'la birlikteydik ve John Ryan'ın Türk toplumuna karşı yakınlığıyla da tanındığını biliyorsunuz. Çünkü yıllar önce Enfield Türk Okulu'nun yanında olmuş ve birçok Enfield Türk Okulu'nun problemlerinin çözülmesinde Türk toplumuna yardımcı olmuştu ve bizler de onu Türk toplumu olarak Enfield bölgesinde çok seviyor ve tutuyoruz ve ona gelecekteki seçimlerde başarılar diliyoruz. Gelecek seneki genel seçimlerde. Good luck to you, John.
Thank you very much. Teşekkürler. I learn little bits of Turkish. It's not easy, you know. But thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.
Evet sevgili Kıbrıs Genç TV izleyicileri, yayınımız sona ermiştir. Sabahın ilk saatleri ve seçimler bitmiştir ve İşçi Partisi tekrar Enfield Belediyesi'ni elinde tutuyor ve İşçi Partisi Enfield Belediyesi'nde iktidar ve hepinize buradan Enfield'den, Londra'dan, Kuzey Londra'dan iyi sabahlar diliyoruz ve hoşça kalın diyoruz.